The lunch rush at Chen's Modern Asian had just ended when Victoria sauntered in, designer heels clicking against our hardwood floors. She held the health inspection report like a trophy, her red lips curved in a triumphant smile. For major violations, she read aloud, loud enough for the remaining customers to hear: improper food storage, inadequate hand-washing facilities, evidence of pest infestation. She paused for dramatic effect. How embarrassing for you, Daniel. I continued, wiping down the counter, keeping my movements calm and deliberate. Is there something I can help you with, Victoria? We're preparing for dinner service. Oh, I doubt you'll need to worry about that, she said, dropping the report on my clean counter. I've already shared this on every review site, posted it on all the local foodie groups. Your reputation is finished. My name is Daniel Chen, and at 34, I was watching my stepmother try to destroy the restaurant I'd built from nothing. What she didn't know was that her little health inspection scheme was exactly what I'd been waiting for. That's thoughtful of you, I said, picking up the report with my gloved hands. Getting the word out like that. Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows drew together in confusion. My calm reaction clearly wasn't what she'd expected. She'd wanted tears, panic, maybe even begging. Instead, she got professional courtesy and a small smile. You don't seem to understand, she said, leaning across the counter. This is it, Daniel, the end of your precious little dream, just like I promised your father would happen if he left you anything in his will. Ah, there it was, the real reason for her vindictive campaign against my restaurant. 6 months ago, my father had passed away, leaving me a substantial inheritance, including the building that housed both my restaurant and Victoria's upscale boutique next door. She'd been his wife for barely 3 years, but somehow she'd convinced herself she deserved everything. What Victoria didn't know was that I'd seen this coming long before Dad died. I'd watched her manipulate him, isolate him from family and friends, position herself to take control of his assets. But Dad had been smarter than she'd realized. He'd seen through her act in his final months, though he'd kept that knowledge to himself. Your father was worried about you, she continued, examining her manicured nails. He told me you weren't ready for real responsibility. That's why he made me executor of the estate. I bit back a laugh. If she only knew about the conversations Dad and I had had in the hospital, about the plans we'd put in motion together. I appreciate your concern, I said, starting to prep vegetables for dinner service. Will you be staying for lunch? Chef Ming's special today is his award-winning Szechuan beef. You're not listening, she snapped, her composure cracking slightly. This report is real. The violations are documented. You're done. I looked up from my careful knife work. Oh, I'm listening, Victoria. I just think you might be the one missing something important. What's that supposed to mean? It means that sometimes people see what they want to see. They don't look deeper. Don't question why things fall into place so conveniently. She straightened up, smoothing her designer blazer. Are you suggesting something improper about the health inspection? Because I assure you, it was completely legitimate. Of course it was, I agreed. Just like the last 3 anonymous complaints about food safety, just like the sudden cancellations of our catering contracts, just like the mysterious negative reviews that all seemed to use the same phrasing. Victoria's face flushed slightly, but she maintained her superior smile. Sounds like you're just not very good at running a restaurant. I set my knife down carefully. You know what's interesting about pattern recognition, Victoria? Once you start looking for certain behaviors, they become very easy to document, very easy to track. What are you babbling about? Nothing important, I said, returning to my prep work. Just thinking out loud. Will there be anything else? As I said, we're preparing for dinner service. She stood there for a moment longer, clearly thrown by my lack of distress. Finally, with a dismissive wave, she turned to leave. Enjoy your last few days in business, Daniel. Maybe next time you'll learn to respect your elders. As the door closed behind her, my sous chef Ming emerged from the kitchen. She bought it? I nodded, pulling out my phone to send a quick text. It's done. She took the bait. Ming grinned, retrieving a small device from under the counter, the camera that had recorded every second of Victoria's visit. Perfect timing too, right after we finished installing the new equipment. I glanced around my restaurant, at the state-of-the-art kitchen visible through the open design, the immaculate dining room, the gleaming surfaces that had passed every legitimate health inspection with flying colors. Victoria thought she was so clever, arranging for a fraudulent inspection during our scheduled renovation week. She had no idea that every violation in that report was about to become evidence in a much larger investigation. My phone buzzed with a response from Sarah. My lawyer, report received. Meeting in 1 hour with the investigators. I turned to Ming. who'd been more than just a chef through all of this. He'd been my partner in an elaborate sting operation. Ready for phase 2? He nodded, already heading back to the kitchen. Been ready for months. Time to show her what real restaurant management looks like. Victoria thought she'd finally won. Thought she'd found a way to force me out of the building she coveted. She had no idea that every move she'd made had been anticipated, documented, and woven into a case that would make her health inspection scheme look like a minor footnote. Because while she'd been focused on destroying my restaurant, I'd been quietly building something much bigger. Something that would not only protect my business but expose years of fraud that went far beyond a fake health report. Dad had taught me well, sometimes you have to let your opponent think they're winning before you show them how thoroughly they've lost. 2 hours later, I sat in Sarah's downtown office, watching as she laid out documents across her conference table. District Attorney Michael Thompson and FBI Agent Lisa Chen, no relation, sat across from us, reviewing the evidence we'd gathered over the past 6 months. The health inspection report was the final piece we needed, Sarah said, adding today's recording to the pile. Victoria didn't just arrange a fraudulent inspection, she actively spread false information about a licensed business with the intent to cause harm. That's just the beginning, Agent Chen added, pulling up files on her laptop. Once we started looking into her activities, we found a pattern going back years. The boutique next door? It's been laundering money for her real business. I nodded, remembering how Dad had first become suspicious. He noticed discrepancies in the store's revenue reports. Designer clothes were being sold for cash, but the inventory never seemed to decrease. Exactly, Michael said. Your father's notes were invaluable. He documented everything once he realized what was happening, but he knew confronting her directly would be dangerous. That's why he reached out to us. The truth was, Dad had done more than just reach out. In his final months, working with the FBI, he'd helped set up an elaborate trap, one that Victoria had walked right into, her greed and vindictiveness making her blind to the signs. Show him the footage, Sarah suggested. Agent Chen turned her laptop around. On the screen, security camera feeds showed Victoria's boutique after hours, well-dressed customers entering through the back door, leaving with more than just designer clothes. The cash transactions, the coded conversations, all of it carefully recorded. We've identified connections to 3 different drug trafficking organizations, Agent Chen explained. The boutique was just a front. The real business was happening in the back room. And the building? I asked, though I already knew the answer. That's where it gets interesting, Sarah said, pulling out another file. Your father's will wasn't just about inheritance. By leaving you the building, he ensured that Victoria couldn't move or hide her operation without raising suspicion. He knew she'd try to force you out instead, which is exactly what she's been doing, Michael added. The false complaints, the sabotaged catering contracts, and now this fraudulent health inspection, it's all part of a documented pattern of harassment. I thought about all the times Victoria had come into my restaurant over the past 6 months, making snide comments about my little hobby and how I was wasting prime retail space. Every visit had been recorded, every threat documented. What about the health inspector? I asked. The one who wrote the report. Agent Chen smiled. Already in custody. He rolled over on Victoria immediately, gave us details about other businesses she's targeted. Turns out our stepmother has quite a reputation for making problems disappear for the right price, and making problems appear for people who get in her way, I added, remembering all the small businesses that had mysteriously failed after crossing paths with Victoria. We're ready to move, Michael said, checking his watch. The warrants are signed. We'll hit the boutique during her afternoon private shopping appointment. I glanced at my phone. Victoria had just posted another scathing review of my restaurant, complete with photos from the fraudulent inspection. Her timing couldn't have been better. What do you need from me? I asked. Just keep doing what you're doing, Sarah advised. Run your restaurant, maintain your standards, let her think she's winning, and maybe, Agent Chen added with a slight smile, be ready with your phone camera at around 3 p.m. Something tells me it's going to be an interesting afternoon in the shopping district. I returned to Chen's Modern Asian just as the lunch rush was ending. Ming had everything running smoothly, our regular customers seemingly unaffected by Victoria's online smear campaign. How'd the meeting go? He asked as I tied on my apron. Everything's set, I replied. They're moving in at 3. He nodded, understanding the significance. The new security cameras are all working. We'll have a perfect view of the boutique's front entrance. I checked my watch, 2 hours to go. Through the restaurant's front windows, I could see Victoria in her boutique, arranging displays with her usual meticulous attention to detail. She had no idea that her carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. At exactly 2:45 p.m., 3 expensive cars pulled up outside the boutique, right on schedule, Victoria's special customers arriving for their private shopping session. I watched as they were ushered inside, the "closed for private event" sign appearing in the window. Ming and I busied ourselves with prep work, though both of us kept glancing at the clock. At 2:55, unmarked vehicles began quietly positioning themselves around the block. At 2:59, I received a text from Agent Chen, "Showtime." The raid was both swift and methodical. FBI agents emerged from seemingly nowhere, converging on the boutique from all directions. Through our security cameras, we watched as Victoria's carefully maintained composure shattered. She tried to run, of course, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail about the building's layout, something I'd learned from studying Dad's old blueprints. The back exit she thought was her escape route had been sealed off during a renovation years ago. The door she kept unlocked led to a storage room. The look on her face as they let her out in handcuffs was almost worth everything she'd put us through. Almost. "Daniel," she shrieked, spotting me standing in my restaurant's doorway. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything, Victoria," I replied calmly, my phone recording everything. "I just ran my restaurant. You're the one who decided to run something else." Her face contorted with rage. "Your father would be ashamed of you. After everything I did for this family." "Everything you did?" I cut her off. "You mean like isolating him from his friends? Manipulating his business decisions? Using his building as a front for your drug operation?" She went pale. "You can't prove any of that." "Actually," Agent Chen said, appearing beside her, "we can prove all of it. Your husband was very thorough with his documentation before he died." Victoria's carefully maintained facade crumbled completely. "Richard, he knew?" "He knew everything," I said quietly. "He just wanted to make sure you couldn't hurt anyone else once he was gone." As they led her to the waiting vehicles, local news crews began arriving, tipped off by an anonymous source about a major drug bust in the upscale shopping district. Victoria's attempt to destroy my restaurant's reputation was about to backfire spectacularly. The aftermath of Victoria's arrest unfolded like a carefully choreographed performance. By evening, every major news outlet in the city was running the story: upscale boutique owner arrested in drug trafficking sting. The health inspection report she'd been so proud of was now just another piece of evidence showing her pattern of harassment and fraud. But the real revelations were just beginning. The day after the raid, I received a call from Agent Chen. "You need to come down to the office. There's something you should see." In the FBI's evidence room, boxes of documents and electronic records from Victoria's boutique told a story far darker than even we had suspected. The drug operation was just the tip of the iceberg. We found evidence linking her to at least 6 failed businesses in the area, Agent Chen explained, spreading photographs across the table. All competitors to her boutique, all forced out through similar methods: fraudulent inspections, sabotaged contracts, staged health code violations. "Just like what she tried to do to me," I said, examining the familiar pattern. "Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting." She pulled out a file marked Richard Chen, personal. "Your father wasn't just documenting her current activities. He found evidence of similar operations going back 15 years, across 3 different states." I sat down heavily, the full weight of what Dad had uncovered hitting me. "She's done this before, multiple times," Sarah confirmed, joining us with more files. "She'd marry successful businessmen, isolate them from family and friends, then use their resources and connections to expand her operation. When they became suspicious or threatened to expose her, she trailed off," but I understood the implication. "Dad's illness, it wasn't natural, was it?" Agent Chen shook her head slowly. "We're having his medical records reviewed. The symptoms he experienced in his final months are consistent with long-term poisoning." The room seemed to spin. I'd suspected Victoria was dangerous, but this was beyond anything we'd imagined. "We found this in her private safe," Sarah said gently, sliding a small notebook across the table. "Your father's handwriting. He documented everything, every suspicious transaction, every unexplained illness, every strange coincidence. He knew what was happening to him, but he needed to make sure she couldn't hurt anyone else." I opened the notebook with trembling hands, recognizing Dad's precise script. "If you're reading this, Daniel, it means everything went according to plan. Victoria thinks she's smarter than everyone else, that's her weakness. She never considered that her target might be playing her instead. The building, the restaurant, the inheritance, it was all part of the trap. I knew she couldn't resist trying to take it from you. Knew she'd use the same methods she's used before. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything while I was alive. It would have put you in danger. But I taught you what you needed to know: patience, observation, the importance of keeping perfect records. Take care of the restaurant. It's more than just a business, it's proof that good things can grow in places where bad things once flourished. Love, Dad. In the days that followed, Victoria's empire crumbled completely. The investigation uncovered connections to organized crime, money laundering operations across multiple states, and evidence linking her to the suspicious deaths of 2 previous husbands. The boutique's inventory was seized, the designer clothes revealed as counterfeits used to justify inflated cash transactions. Even her designer lifestyle was fake, the expensive cars were leased, the jewelry was cubic zirconia, the high society connections were all similarly compromised people involved in her schemes. Meanwhile, Chen's modern Asian thrived. The publicity from Victoria's arrest brought curious customers who stayed for the food and atmosphere. Ming's innovative menu and our impeccable service standards earned us legitimate recognition, including a coveted Michelin star 6 months later. 1 year after Victoria's arrest, I sat in my office above the restaurant, reviewing the latest renovation plans. We were expanding into the space formerly occupied by the boutique, creating a high-end private dining room and cooking school. Mr. Chen? My assistant Katie appeared in the doorway. There's a letter from the Federal Correctional Facility. I knew without opening it who it was from. Victoria had been writing regularly since her conviction, each letter a mixture of threats and attempts at manipulation. I'd stopped reading them months ago, but this one felt different. Dear Daniel. By now you know everything, about your father, about the others, about who I really am. The prosecutors are offering a deal in exchange for information about my previous operations. They want names, dates, details. Before I tell them anything, I want you to know something: your father was different. He saw through me in a way no one else had. That's why I had to, well, you know what I had to do. But he outsmarted me anyway. He raised a son who could see the long game, who understood that sometimes you have to let your enemy think they're winning. I underestimated both of you. Victoria. I placed the letter in the case file Sarah maintained, then turned to look out my office window. The street below was busy with lunchtime traffic, people going about their lives unaware of the drama that had unfolded here just a year ago. The restaurant was full, as usual. Through the open kitchen design, I could see Ming teaching a young apprentice the proper technique for dim sum. The space that had once housed Victoria's illicit operation now rang with honest laughter and the sounds of genuine commerce. Dad would have loved this, I thought. Not just the restaurant's success, but what it represented: the triumph of patience over greed, of careful planning over quick schemes, of truth over deception. That evening, as I worked the dinner service, a customer asked about the restaurant's name. Why modern Asian? Why not traditional? Is to build something new from its foundations, to take what was good and true, and help it grow into something even better, just like Dad had taught me, just like the restaurant had proved, and just like Victoria had never understood. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about building something your enemies never thought possible, right where they tried to destroy you.